What's up, guys? Here we go again. Hurricane Florence could potentially impact Florence, South Carolina. It's true. You guys want to talk about the Helena slump? That's always a possibility, especially after what's just happened out there. That could happen at any time, to be honest. There's that better? Testing, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. All right, good deal, good deal. What's up, guys? Sorry about that. My apologies. So where's everybody at? Anybody from the East Coast? Anybody from either of the Carolinas, South or North? All right. What I'm seeing on here, and according to all of the news outlets that you guys probably see also, this Hurricane Florence could make an East Coast impact with wind gusts of up to 165 mile an hour at times. That's not sustained, but that's coming straight from the National Hurricane Center. I want to show you guys because I mentioned that in another video today, and people were under the impression that it was just a Category 4, which just a Category 4 is still a huge storm. But if you go to, which I'm going to take you there now, the National Hurricane Center. There we go. I don't know if you can see this or not, but that right there shows, and this is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. These are wind gusts of up to 175 miles per hour, and that's just offshore on September 12th. September 12th evening, closer to midnight, still offshore gusts of 175 mile an hour. Getting close to landfall, this is in 5 days. Maximum wind speeds of 140, gusts of 165 mile an hour. And that's less than 100 miles offshore. So this could be a really big storm, and I don't see any other options as far as it turning north. It could go south. But there is one model that's showing a weird turn to the north, and I want to show you guys this. And it kind of reminds me of a hurricane from back in 2004. I was in 3 hurricanes back in 2004. Hurricane Charlie, Hurricane Francis, and Hurricane Jean. And Hurricane Francis set right out here, moving at 3 miles an hour. Over 1 million people evacuated Florida. I stayed. And the hurricane set out here and spun for over 2 days. And it was a huge hurricane, bigger than the state of Texas. And then it went across the state in this direction. It didn't do much damage because Hurricane Charlie had already come through about 2 weeks before and took everything down that was going to come loose. And then Francis come through, and it wasn't as strong as Charlie, so it really didn't do that much damage, except it rained for about 30 hours straight. But Florida can handle, the water because of the way the soil is in Florida, but it wasn't that bad. But this one here, but Francis was only like a Category 1. It was a big storm, but it didn't have real high winds. This one's got high winds and a lot of water content. So this is 5 days away, so in 5 days, if you're in this area, be prepared. I want to show you something that really, this is a good model too, and I don't understand where it's getting this information from. And I know where it's getting the information from. It's getting it from the upper steering currents, right up here. All this stuff is what guides these storms. Check this one out. This is an interesting model here. Clips North Carolina, sits there, and goes in reverse. Look at that. And then goes out to sea next Thursday, but sits here for 5 days offshore of North Carolina. Watch, I'll play it again. Sits offshore for 5 days as a Cat 5. Watch, I'm not kidding. Watch this pressure. Goes down to 909, 911, 910, 912. And then it goes off. 909 millibars is a Category 5 storm. We're going to stop this and step it through one frame at a time. And then we'll talk about the Helena slump here in a little bit. We'll talk about permafrost. I heard there was some questions about permafrost. But let's talk hurricanes for a minute first. Okay, Monday the 10th. You can see the storm right over here coming up. That's in 48 hours. We're going to go ahead and step it up to Tuesday. 956 millibars. That's in the Category 2 range. Wednesday, 944 millibars. Strong Cat 2. Getting close to Category 3. Thursday the 13th. Showing this thing offshore. This is a different model. This is a GFS model. Okay, you got GFS and you've got European. Those are the two main ones that are used the majority of the time. And usually it's a combination of what both of those models imply. However, this time they're considerably different. That's why I wanted to do this live stream. Okay, this is Thursday the 13th, 5 days out. Showing it offshore, 947 millibars. That's a Cat, let's say Cat 3, all right? Could be a Cat 4, but Cat 3 for sure. And then we're going to go ahead and step it up to Friday, and it gets up right close to the Outer Banks. Look at that. At 909 millibars. And that's in the Gulf Stream waters, so that's probably what this model is sensing or computing, giving it that much more strength because it's in such extremely warm water. I'm assuming, I don't know. All I know is it drops to 909 millibars, and it sits here for like 3 days. Watch this. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it goes backwards. I've seen a storm do that before, years ago. Going backwards. Now it's going down towards, or at least parallel with South Carolina on Monday. And then on Tuesday, it starts to head to the northeast, maintaining that very low pressure around 911. And then as it gets away from the shore, the pressure goes up to 937, 938, which is still a Category 3, Category 4 storm. And then off to the North Atlantic. But look at that. Look how weird that is. And it just sits there for 3 days. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's the GFS model. And it shows the same thing over here at Venture. This is Tuesday the 11th. We're going to go to 2 p.m. The afternoon thermals are kicked in good, okay? And then we'll jump it up a day at a time. This is Wednesday. Thursday, right offshore of the Outer Banks. And then Friday, stays there 24 hours. It didn't even hardly move. Jumping ahead 24 more hours to Saturday. Goes backwards Sunday. Goes backwards even farther, and that's as far as we can go. So this GFS model, which is usually a pretty good source of information, for whatever reasons, and I know what reasons it's going by, it's these steering currents up here. For whatever reasons, though, it's got this thing hanging around off of the coast of North Carolina for the better part of 3.5, 4 days, which is very unusual. So that's the GFS. We're going to jump over to the European model. Now this one here is more direct. Wednesday the 12th. Moving ahead to Thursday. Right offshore. Making impact Thursday the 13th. Getting close Wednesday overnight as a significant storm, a major storm. I don't know if it's a Category 3, Category 4, maybe have gusts of Category 5. But that's Thursday. Overnight hours of Wednesday. Hopefully, if it does follow this track, like the European model is suggesting, if those overnight landfalls are, no landfall is good when you're talking about a major hurricane, but at least during the daylight hours, you can kind of see what you're doing. At night makes it a little tough. And there's Florence, South Carolina. Believe it or not, right there is Florence, South Carolina. It's going to possibly impact on Thursday. Wednesday, it's getting close. Let's look at the sea swells real quick. Sea swells covering a large area. That's on Wednesday. As this thing starts to gain strength, it will regain strength according to the National Weather Service tonight. Should be any hour. Regain strength to a Category 1 hurricane. I would say by tomorrow afternoon, based off of the waters that I saw, this thing will easily become a Category 3 storm probably by Monday morning. It'll be back into Category 3 because there's nothing in its way. I'll show you here in just a minute. But these are the waves, offshore waves. Huge wave field. Spans good 800 miles of some sort of wave propagation. It's not all major. Like those right there, 27-foot offshore waves, 14-foot, and that's right around landfall time. So a lot of wave action up and down the entire seaboard, really, but closer to the area of landfall, which this is showing North Carolina, slightly north of South Carolina, right on that line. So it'll be interesting to see which model is correct. Maybe they're both wrong. Who knows? Let's go back to the wind gusts, and I'll show you the GFS model here at windy.com. This is a good source of information, too. Sometimes they're both right on the money, and they usually both come in agreement the closer it gets to landfall. But usually when there's still enough time like this, we're talking 5 days out or so, they usually vary. That's not uncommon. This is the GFS model, and this is the one that shows it hanging around the coast of North Carolina for about 3.5 days. Really interesting. Watch this. Okay, coming up. Now it's right off the coast of the Outer Banks. Throwing those big tuna around, right? As a Cat 5. According to those numbers, that's a Cat 5. That's Friday morning. It's been there since Thursday. Friday afternoon. Friday evening. Friday night. Saturday morning. Look at that thing. Saturday afternoon. Saturday night. Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon. Sunday night. Monday morning. Monday afternoon. You kidding me? Monday night. Still there. That's absolutely nuts. This thing's got a wind field. Well, the orange is technically part of the wind field, and so is the green too, but it's very, very mild. But the stronger wind fields, the reds, the pinks, the purples, the blues, I mean, that extends for, what, nearly 700 miles? I mean, that thing's huge if it unfolds that way. The European model has this thing going directly inland. And it could impact, like I was saying earlier, Florence, South Carolina. How weird is that? Here. So anyway, this is the GFS model. We'll have to see which one's correct as we move forward in time. So we'll have to wait and see, guys. I don't know. These models, they're computing. Here's what's interesting. They're computing the same atmospheric highs and lows. And that's what steers these things right up here. This is what you're looking at. These are the driving forces behind tropical storms and hurricanes. All these lines up here you see. And they all mean something. But that's what drives these storms right up here. Just like Irma last year when We saw Irma form way out here in the far East Pacific. It was these steering currents was what brought Irma in. Irma made a 4,000-mile journey to the U.S. mainland. But anyway, this one here is also, if it does make landfall, will have made a several 1,000-mile journey if it does touch the U.S. mainland, which it kind of looks like now that there's a good chance that it could. So we'll have to wait and see. But you guys, I know there was a lot of questions about this sand. This is nullschool.net. This is a site that I use quite often for a lot of different things around the world, including tropical storms and hurricanes. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and we also use this to monitor atmospheric particulates. And there's been some questions about this Saharan sand making it to the U.S. mainland via a tropical storm. It's already here, guys. It's just coming here a little bit quicker. The sand is at the tops of these tropical storms. How these storms are forming in this type of environment is kind of an enigma, if you ask me. This one down here, this is a few days out, by the way. But this one down here, I think, is Helena. This wave of sand, the sand cloud, it's physically there. The green that you see on this particular software application generally isn't there. This is normally blue. Especially the darker, the tans and the darker greens, that is atmospheric dust particulates. It's not smoke, it's not clouds. This is strictly sand or dust particulates. Pretty simple. There's nothing here that we can get it confused with. And if you move it around, so you can even see it clear down here in Australia. But if you move this globe around, this is what it's supposed to look like right here. See that blue? That's normally when there's not a lot of atmospheric particulates in the sky, in the atmosphere. This is normally blue. There's no reason for it to be green. Green and especially tan, the light brown. It's all coming from one place, the Western Sahara Desert. And it's being delivered to the U.S. mainland, the Caribbean. Right now, in fact, it's being delivered quickly. It's been coming over here for weeks. It's been doing this for over 2 months. Florence is dragging some of this dust particulate matter with it. That is 100% correct. Whether anybody wants to admit it or not doesn't really matter to me. I know better because I've been watching this cloud since day one, and it hasn't stopped. I've followed these clouds via beach cams in Puerto Rico, beach cams in the Caribbean, beach cams in the Bahamas, beach cams in Florida, beach cams and webcams in Texas. I've followed these dust clouds for weeks. They're very real. Ask anybody in your community if they haven't had eye irritants and sinus issues and stuff like that. We're breathing this stuff in, and we're not used to it over here in the U.S. mainland. Out here where I live in the desert, yeah, it's a dusty environment, but we're accustomed to our own form of dust that we have out here. It's not something you ever really get used to, but it becomes a way of life. You bring dust from another continent over into your environment, it's going to take a while to adapt, if you ever do. There's been several people with pink eye out here. A lot of cases of pink eye, and in some respects, people think they have pink eye, but it's really not. It's irritant from this dust, so hopefully it will go away, but that dust is wrapped into that hurricane, absolutely. It's in the upper levels of the hurricane where it's not wet, but it is making a trip to, or it's actually an expedited trip across the Atlantic Ocean. Absolutely. In fact, this is set up for the 12th. Let me take this back a few days. Let's go back to the 11th, the 10th, the 9th, and then the 8th, which is today. And you can see Florence has always been out ahead of this wave here. This tropical depression, now I don't think it's named yet. I think this one is Helena. This one's not named yet, but you can see it's very tightly wrapped with Saharan dust. And it probably will not get any stronger than a Category 1. It just won't allow it to get tall enough. There's just no way. If that ever got above a Category 1, I would be absolutely very, very surprised. This one's just far enough in front of this thick, stable air to expand, get some height. These storms like to breathe. This one here is not going to make it very far. It may make a partial journey, but it's just simply not going to do much. I don't think it's scientifically possible. It came off as a strong tropical wave, but I don't think it's going to go much farther than that. I don't know how it can. This one's far enough in front of this wave to where, being in peak hurricane season, these things have enough moisture in them to outmuscle this dusty atmosphere, and they are forming. It's peak hurricane season. Plus, it's my humble opinion that we have more moisture in the atmosphere these days. That's why we're seeing flooding in all 50 states. Some places, multiple rounds of extreme flooding. North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, has seen over 60 inches of rain just this year. North or south, several places along the eastern seaboard, 30 inches of rain, 40 inches of rain, and more on the way, possibly. But I think there's more moisture in the atmosphere, and that gave these hurricanes that are forming out here in these tropical storms a little bit of an advantage over this dusty environment. Made them a little stronger. They got a lot of water content in them. Just like Gordon. When I said Gordon had that water anomaly, what I meant was, I don't think I have it on, well, actually, no, it's not on this one. But there's a feature when you look at the water content on tropical storms. It's a different color of white. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Nope. This is still some moisture left over from Gordon, right through here. But when Gordon was coming ashore, and it was moving very quickly through the warm waters of the Gulf, and it's a good thing because the waters are, 88 degrees in the Gulf of Mexico in some places? 87? But it was moving forward speed at 16, 17 miles per hour. If it would have been moving at 10 or 9, it would have had time to gain a lot more strength and accumulate a lot more moisture. But it still had what was called, or what I call, a water anomaly that brought a lot of water inland. There were water rescues in Mississippi. This is still some moisture left over from Hurricane Gordon. It's going through Indiana. It's going through Ohio. I showed you guys yesterday water in the city streets of Cincinnati, Midland, Pennsylvania, parts of Dallas, Indianapolis, just every state in the union. So yeah, this is moisture embedded and being carried across from this big jet right here. Look at that. That extends over 1,800 miles. It's huge. There's more moisture in the atmosphere. And whenever the sky opens up to release it, it comes down in the inches, sometimes feet at a time. Somebody was saying yesterday that out here in Pennsylvania, they got 4 inches of rain in like 20 minutes. Something just unheard of. It's because there's more moisture in the atmosphere. And it's doing its best to manage it. But like I said, when it lets go, it just lets go. 60 inches in the Carolinas. I think it was North Carolina. Wilmington, I think. 62 inches. Correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere out here had 62 inches of rain just this year. So it's my humble opinion that there's more moisture in the atmosphere because the permafrost is being released from the ground. Perma means permanent. And that means in our lifetimes, that moisture in the ground has been in the form of ice. It's never been able to evaporate and go up into the atmosphere. Where we get the word permanent. Permafrost. It's a permanent layer of frost in the ground that can extend, in some cases, over 200 miles deep. It's melting. It's thawing. And when it thaws, it has the chance to evaporate. At least a certain part of it. Not all of it. But just like the oceans, they constantly evaporate water. The water on the land evaporates. That's what creates drought. So no different with the permafrost up in the Arctic. When it melts and becomes a liquid, it can vaporize and become a vapor, which allows it to be carried up into the upper level jet streams, which it can form storms, tropical storms. It can come down in a variety of ways. It can come back down in snow, in the form of snow, in the form of fog, in the form of downpours that we're seeing across the United States. A lot of different ways. But water is a three-phase, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a three-phase element. It can be a solid, a liquid, or a vapor. Ice is permafrost. And we've always known it to be permanent. But when it's melting, it's generating more atmosphere and it's letting more atmospheric hydrogen atoms loose. So it's causing flooding and it's causing big tropical storms like we're seeing here. So Tropical Storm Florence, the way it stands now, is predicted to come in somewhere between South Carolina and North Carolina. Here's the wind field, the earliest reasonable arrival of tropical storm force winds. This is next Wednesday evening. And then supposedly making landfall, unfortunately, overnight into the early morning hours of Thursday. Which, there's no good time for a tropical storm to make landfall. But if it does, you don't want it to do it when it's dark, So that would be Wednesday the 12th into Thursday. But again, this is a forecast, and it is subject to change. But usually when you get the data straight from the National Hurricane Center, these guys, this is what they do, okay? Granted, weather can change, weather patterns can change. We all understand that, but the National Hurricane Center, that's the National Hurricane Center. That's what they do, is predict and follow hurricanes. They're good at it. So this is where they're expecting this thing to go. So expect it to happen somewhere in this area. Pretty safe bet. I don't know what we've got going on here, but it's something to necessarily not completely rule out. Consider maybe some, I don't know if that's entirely true or not. I don't know what this thing is doing, but it's normally, it's a pretty decent source, but it's got this thing acting really, really unusual. So I don't know what to think of this. I'm just considering all options. You've got to look at all options when you are following tropical storms and hurricanes. Simple as that. You need to check all of your options. But the main one is obviously the National Hurricane Center. These guys are the pros. They know what's happening. But this storm is moving into more favorable, what am I looking for? The word, wind shear. It's been in the middle of heavy wind shear for the last couple of days, actually. And there was another storm that it ended up being a retired storm. Hurricane Andrew did the same thing many years ago, back in 1992. It was pretty much written off for a while That's why they don't write these things off anymore, just because they enter a heavy wind shear field. This thing encountered wind shear for over 48 hours, and it looked like it was completely falling apart. Hurricane Andrew did the same thing. Let me see if I can, there we go. Now it's starting to regain its bearings, so to speak, and it's starting to reassemble back into what looks like a hurricane. So Andrew did the same type of thing back in, 1992? Made landfall as a Cat 5. I'm not saying that this one's going to, but I am saying this. This one is supposed to have wind gusts of up to 165 and 175 miles per hour on Tuesday and early Wednesday. Those are Category 5 wind speeds. So, however you slice it or dice it, it's going to be a major hurricane. Hopefully it won't make landfall at all, but right now it does definitely look like it's going to. And it will more than likely have a lot of moisture in it, because the atmosphere has a lot of moisture in it. I think it has a lot of extra moisture in it just by looking at the water tables, especially along the eastern seaboard. The water or the ground is incredibly saturated. I mean, all the way from parts of Maine down through Georgia, Florida, and now after Gordon, you've got a big part of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. The ground is very, very moist. It can't hold any more water. Our tributaries that manage the water on the ground, the rivers, the lakes, and the streams, especially around the Mississippi and east of the Mississippi, they're running at full capacity. In fact, up in Wisconsin, they're overloading, which creates a flood. Farmers can't get the crops out of the field. Farmers can't get the crops out of the field. That's not a good thing. So too much is not good. We need balance. So that's my my theory, guys, on the permafrost, and the permafrost being unlocked from out of the ground, and it's now roaming freely around the world, collecting into storms and coming down in the form of rain, creating floods. The ratios have changed. Even probably back when we were kids, you know. I don't remember it storming like this, especially in August and September. Flooding all over the place in August and September. Yeah, we'd had spring floods or spring rain, you know, heavy rain in the spring. That was very normal. But the summers were generally hot and dry. But it's changed. There's more moisture in the atmosphere. The Helena slump, guys, I don't have anything up for the Helena slump right now on my desktop. I wasn't prepared to talk about that, but guys, from what I understand about the Helena slump, that can happen at any time. Obviously, conditions are more conducive during a lava flow and a volcanic eruption, but as far as that happening, you know, I don't know. I can't say for sure. Look at all this lightning. You know, you'd have to have localized seismographs, and you'd have to have access to those seismos 24 hours a day to be able to watch the ground extremely close to notice any sort of unusual movement. Got a lot of lightning scattered from Mexico all the way up to Canada. Not an extreme amount, but it follows that big jumbo jet. This one right here. It's a jumbo jet. Where's our lightning? There we go. Oh, here's something else that I meant to tell you guys earlier and I forgot. I've updated the website. You guys are all familiar with this. It's in the description box of every video that I do. I've added this red tab over here. Hurricanes. And I'll talk about the Schumann resonance here in just a moment. And I'll tell you probably what you're seeing, okay? But first, the red tab, Atlantic hurricanes. That's the tab that I've been showing you guys in this live stream. Shows you the Atlantic basin. Anything you see out here that looks like a tropical storm and is heading west. Keep an eye on it. Could be coming to our location. Right now there's Florence. This is a tropical disturbance that I don't know what it's going to do. This is Helena and Tropical Depression. So that's a new tab at the website. You can find it right there. Red tab that says Atlantic Hurricanes. And it's updated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Schumann Res. Let's check it out. What do we got here? That looks like a stream of high-speed solar wind. Right on time. Actually a little late. But I'm assuming that that's what we've got going on here, guys. That's a stream of solar wind from a coronal hole from the sun. The sun overall has been pretty quiet, but every once in a while, when a coronal hole faces the Earth and the interplanetary magnetic field tilts south, auroras light up, and the party begins. And I think that's what we're seeing right there. That's what increased the frequency of planet Earth. And that does. That's one way that it does right there, that we can actually see the K index. It should be up. Let's look and see. Slightly, but that's probably what caused the Schumann spike. That right there. I know it's not much, but it doesn't necessarily take a whole lot. Moon phase, Schumann resonance, real-time light. Let's look at the seismos real quick. But yeah, as far as the Helena slump goes, you've got to have access to those Hawaiian seismographs. You've got to watch for movement like you can here at the website. I've got Yellowstone up here, so we can monitor Yellowstone and the Yellowstone caldera. And if we ever see something across all of these platforms, and I'm talking something pretty good sized, then you'll know something's up. But all this movement that you see right here, this is pretty normal, to be honest. I expect there to be movement. Now that there's not. That is very unusual. Is that the steamboat or something? That's way off. But it's not on all the seismos. That one's way, way off. Almost looks like an error. Let me look at this one. That one's normally pretty busy. But I expect something from this super volcano. I don't expect it to be completely quiet. It's a big, strong volcano. But when I see a big signature across all of these platforms, then you'll know that, hey, this thing is legitimately waking up. Right now, I don't see anything, guys. It looks pretty quiet, to be honest. You're talking about this is home to the largest geyser field on Earth. So there's going to be movement up here around the caldera. Not only that, it's a super volcano, so I would expect it to have a little bit of movement. Solar wind, X-ray, the ancient Earth globe, if you haven't checked that out. It's kind of fun. You can put in your address up here and go back in time millions of years to see what the Earth looked like 450 million years ago. Just something different to learn. That's all. We try to learn here at the website. I think I have... I don't know how I got... the daily report, news articles in there. That's the newsroom. It's updated daily, sometimes multiple times a day. And don't forget to check out my Facebook and Twitter and the Instagram. We've been putting pictures on Instagram, just some really unique pictures, just to kind of make that fun, because we get some really cool pictures from you guys. And keep them coming. I'm slow at getting them sometimes because there's an abundance that come in. But if you have some neat sky phenomenon pictures, or just pictures in general that you want to share, you can send them to reports@mrmbb333.com. And this is the Sky Phenomenon Photo Gallery. In my humble opinion, it's the finest collection of sky phenomenon in the world, because you guys made this up, not me. This is all you right here. All you. You guys sent in all these pictures, and it goes on for a mile. So good job. Keep the cameras rolling and keep those pictures coming. I will get to them sooner than later, but there's a lot coming in, guys, and I'm only, one person that tries to go through them. I do have my wife helps me go through some of those, but it's a lot. But keep them coming. We love sky phenomenon, especially the pictures. But back to the hurricane. If you're along the eastern seaboard, you don't need me to tell you to prepare for the possibility of a major hurricane. I don't really see anything that is going to change the direction of this storm. This is showing us something very unusual. It's coming up here and stalling for over 3 days. That's highly unusual. I don't know that this is going to happen, but it is a model that we at least need to consider. And it shows it strengthening to a Cat 5 during this very unusual time. Watch this. Lingering around for days. So this model here, I don't know what to make of it. Like I said, normally it's a pretty reliable source of information, but I don't know. It's so far away from the National Hurricane Center and then the European model. I'm assuming that the European model is normally the one to go to, and that's the one that I normally use, and that's this one right here. And if this one is correct, then look for a landfall overnight Wednesday into early Thursday morning. And hopefully, if it does continue on this track, it will be more towards the daylight hours. So that way, if the electricity does go out, at least you've still got daylight, and flooding. You can kind of manage yourself, your family, and your belongings the best you can a little better in the daylight hours. But it looks like, according to this model here, and this one's normally pretty accurate, a landfall Thursday morning, possibly Wednesday night. And I'm assuming that at the National Hurricane Center, I'm going to go to the interactive map. I'm going to show you what it's showing me. I didn't just make this up. Let's see if it will. Oh, here we go. We're already there. Okay, let's zoom in. Get in close. There we go. Let me take that feature off. It shows hurricane force winds showing up on Wednesday, or tropical storm force. Look at this one here as it's offshore. Wind gusts 150 knots, 175 miles per hour, because the waters are so warm offshore here. That's the Gulf Stream, and those waters are very, very warm. As it gets close to land, right offshore of North Carolina, South Carolina, right in the middle right now, it's going to probably move one way or the other. I doubt that it'll stay perfectly the same. Wind gusts of 165 miles per hour. And that's 5 days from today. And again, that's a forecast. And every forecast that I've ever heard has always changed just a little. So it may be perfect, but I doubt it. It will probably change some. I don't know how much, but forecast models can do and will change. But the strength, normally they're pretty accurate with the strength and the direction here at the National Hurricane Center. So these guys are the pros. If they're saying it's going there, prepare for it. And hopefully, nothing will happen. But it looks like to me it's going to affect the Carolinas this coming week. And it will have some dust in it, whether you see it or not. May or may not be possible because of all of the rain and the wind, but it does have a certain amount in it. Believe it or not, it's the truth. It's been coming across the Atlantic Ocean for weeks anyway without the aid of a hurricane or a tropical storm. Look, you can see it over here in the western United States. That's dust. This is all dust from the Sahara. It's in South America. It's in Australia. It's all over the entire Earth. And it's no coincidence that Earth slowly, and this event started right here, and it began slowly, that the entire Earth, here's what it's supposed to look like. Here you go. Here's a classic example. I've had some people ask me, well, is this supposed to look green? No. There's the color it's supposed to look right there. Blue. See that blue? That's what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be all blue. Right there. That's dust, dust, dust. Earth went into a planetary dust storm the same time Mars did. How about that? That is highly coincidental. Something else I wanted to at least touch base on, if you have any friends or interests over in Taiwan, this storm here could be, well, it soon, according to the models, will be the strongest storm on planet Earth. This is slated to be a super typhoon. Let me see if I can find a good, there we go. I can only go up 5 days here at Null School, but I'll go up as far as I can. This is today, right now. It's converting into a hurricane. That's a Cat 2 tomorrow evening. This is Monday. Should be a Cat 3 as it goes past Guam. All right. The 11th. By the 11th, this thing should be up into the Category 4 range. I think this is as far as I can go. The 12th. Maybe I can go one more day. Let's see. Nope, that's it. You can only go 5 days into the future on Null School, which they don't feel that there's any degree of certainty after 5 days because too much can change after 5 days. But that is scheduled to be, by every model I've looked at, a major super typhoon with wind gusts of over 180 miles per hour going right at Taiwan. Becoming a super typhoon in the Philippine Sea. Maybe we can see it over here on Bench of Sky real quick. That's Florence going somewhere in the Carolinas, more than likely. Here it is. This is the super typhoon. Mangkhut. All right. Let's see if it's changed any. Still got those big winds. And of course, this is the GFS model, so maybe it will change. I don't know, but it's got it going right through Taiwan. This is Friday the 14th. So a lot can change between now and then. Winds of 182 miles per hour. Those are wind gusts, but that's still a very strong storm that will produce incredible storm surge. Obviously, wind damage. That will be like an Irma. Irma last year had wind gusts of over 180. So that will be similar to Hurricane Irma of 2017. In fact, that could be the rebirth of Hurricane Irma. It's exactly the same numbers. It's just in a different hemisphere. Last year, Irma was over here in the eastern, or in the Atlantic Ocean. That one's in the Pacific. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for now. I hope this was helpful. It does look like there is going to be a landfall of a major hurricane in the next 5 days. Hurricane Florence. We'll have to wait and see. The models are pretty much in agreement, except for the GFS has the storm hanging around off of the coast of North Carolina near the Outer Banks for about 3 days. Whether that is true or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I wanted to share that with you because it's quite a bit different than what the European model is suggesting, and that's showing a direct impact into a line between North and South Carolina. Let's see if I can find it again. Yeah, right here. And that's from the National Hurricane Center. So let me see. Was there some questions? Surf's up. Surf will be up. Sorry, guys. Let me get to some questions. Does anybody have any questions? I'll do my very best to answer them. Thank you, Renee. That was very kind of you. Very, very kind. Big heads up, guys, if you're on the East Coast, no doubt. The thing about this is it's scheduled to make landfall overnight. So be ready. If this thing does make landfall overnight, that's the worst possible time. It's going to be pitch dark with the possibility of the electricity going out near the center of rotation, and could quite possibly be farther away from the center of rotation depending on the strength of the storm. So make sure you have a backup light source so you can see what you're doing if the power does go out. Have all that stuff ready today. And the worst thing that can happen is you won't need it. And if you do need it, you got it. You're good. Have a flotation device. Always have something that's nearby and you know where it's at that you can use as a flotation device. That is very important. You ever get caught in floodwaters? I don't care how good of a swimmer you are, eventually you're going to get tired. It's a whole lot easier if you've got a flotation device just to hang on to until you can get to dry ground or somebody can help you. That would be awesome. So just be ready. It does look like it's coming in. Big storm. Big storm. Are the storms in the eastern Atlantic likely to impact the Caribbean? That was Don. Don, it looks like one will, but I don't think it's going to be very strong. I don't think it's going to be much higher than a Category 1, which it still could bring a lot of rain. Any tropical storms can bring a lot of rain, but I don't think it's going to be anything like this storm or anything like a Hurricane Irma. I don't think it's going to be able to. It's not going to be able to get that tall. There's just no way. And if you look at null school, maybe I'll bring null school up and show you real quick what I mean by that. Go back to the particulates. This storm here just got out in front of this wall of dust. The one that's going towards the Caribbean, which is back here, let me show you. This is Florence. It's in front of the dust. It's got a lot of moisture in it, so it was able to outmuscle the dust. This one here will impact the Caribbean. Right now, I don't know how far it will, but it's not going to be very strong. It'll be at least a Category 1. I doubt if it gets any stronger than that. The second storm out here is going to go north. This one's not going to be allowed. It won't be able to get that strong. It can't rise up above that dust. Florence is a little bigger storm. It's got a little more moisture, and plus, it's not involved directly with a dust cloud, so will probably be at least a Cat 4. So we'll have to wait and see. You're in the Carolinas, and I can tell you we are not ready for a major storm. Well, get as ready as you can. I don't think anybody ever is completely prepared. Be as ready as you can be, because it does look like it is coming that direction. Be as ready as you can be, guys. I Cat 4 for sure, the way the Hurricane Center is implying with wind gusts of over 160, but at least a Cat 4, yes. Cat 4. All right, guys, I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to have to get off here. It's been my pleasure chatting with you guys, as always. I hope this works out well. I'm watching the storm 24/7. Well, not literally, but I do watch these a lot. I spend a lot of time following hurricanes. I'm kind of a storm tracker, I guess, because ever since I was in the hurricanes back in 2004, that's when I became, I guess, a storm tracker. I've never really considered myself a storm tracker per se, but I do track them. So I guess technically I am. Because if you've ever been in a hurricane, and that year changed my perception of weather and the environment forever. When I was in 3 hurricanes, I saw how quickly shelves in stores, the food items in every major and small grocery store vanished within 2 or 3 hours. The shelves were empty of canned goods, bread, milk, and believe it or not, beer. I don't drink beer now, but back then, that was, of course, back in 2004. But yeah, beer sold out, and then especially water and plywood. People were in line at the Home Depots for plywood 100 yards long. In fact, they ran out. They couldn't get enough plywood. They couldn't keep enough in stock. Generators were sold out quickly. In fact, I saw one guy at a gas station, and this was in the Orlando, Florida area, right before Hurricane Charlie. Actually, it was right after Hurricane Charlie because people weren't expecting Hurricane Charlie to come into the Orlando area. It was supposed to go to Tampa. And everybody from Tampa came to Orlando thinking, okay, they're going to be clear of the storm. And then the storm took a quick right-hand turn into Punta Gorda and came up into Orlando. So people were not expecting that. So when Hurricane Francis came, I mean, people were... I saw a guy try to lift a gentleman's... Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Renee. I saw a guy try to lift a generator out of the back of a guy's pickup truck at a gas station. He was just going to take it. And the guy came... He was there putting gas in it. And he went in to pay for his gas. And or grab a bottle of water or something, I don't know. Come back out, and here was a guy trying to take his generator out of the back of his truck. I mean, it got chaotic for a while. You know, and then especially during Hurricane Charlie when the electricity went out, I knew people had friends that didn't have power for nearly a month. One of my good buddies didn't have power for 2 weeks. If you're in a community where your electrical lines are underground, you have a better chance of not losing your electricity than you do in a community that has your power lines above ground on a pole. And take a look out around your community, because if you see your power lines next to big trees, chances are if those trees get to moving because of the high winds, they're going to interact with those power lines and ultimately take the power out. And that's what happened back in Orlando in 2004. There was a lot of tree overgrowth that was into a lot of power poles and power lines. And they weren't expecting 100-mile-an-hour winds from a hurricane. But it came, and it took out hundreds and upon hundreds of screened-in pool patios. And then, like I said, the power grid was over a month getting people back online. So it was quite an ordeal, and it's no fun. There's nothing fun about it. Nothing fun about it. So anyway, guys, I wanted to mention one more thing before I get off here. The UV. I don't do UV reports. I still check the UV. Like the other day, I checked the UV a couple of days ago. I got a 45 UVC, which we should get 0 at ground level. And I got an 11.3 UVAB total, which is normal for out here. But the UVC should always be 0 at ground level. And I think that the combination of that, the UVC, and then the higher UV levels in the upper latitudes, I got to be honest, out here in Arizona and Florida, across the 30-degree latitude, because I had a gentleman taking UV readings from Florida. You know, Florida never saw UV that was exceptionally high. I didn't see UV here in Arizona that was exceptionally high. It was exceptionally high at the higher latitudes of planet Earth. Oregon, British Columbia, Canada, Toronto was seeing high UV. The Netherlands, can you believe that? The Netherlands is at the 51-degree latitude, almost 52. So you're getting up there, 15 degrees from the Arctic Circle? And we wonder why the permafrost is melting. Because the Netherlands saw a UV reading one day up there of 10. That's an Arizona reading. That's a desert reading out here in Arizona. Why is the UV in the Netherlands at 10? So if the UV, because if the sunlight feels hotter on your skin, everybody can vouch for that. Everybody you talk to that's paying attention says the sunlight feels hotter. You know, you're out in the sunlight for 15 minutes, you're looking for shade. We all know that. It's no secret. Well, the ground feels the same thing, and it's melting permafrost. So that's, honestly, I firmly believe that, because we've seen too many UV readings from the higher latitudes extending from Montana. I got high UV readings from South Dakota, Wisconsin. A gentleman was sending me readings from Wisconsin that were in the 11 and 12 range. They shouldn't be that high in Wisconsin. That's up around 43-degree latitude north, or 50. Not 50, but 44. where he was sending them from. Beaverton, Oregon, Great Falls, high UV readings up there. So, to me, it just makes sense that the higher UV readings are cutting loose permafrost. Permafrost is it's literally transforming from a solid to a liquid, and it's going into Earth's atmosphere, collecting, coming down in the form of heavy rain. We're seeing a year's worth of rain in one day in places. Who's ever heard of that? I mean, it's pretty wild, really. Do I think it'll ever get back to normal? Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do. Absolutely. That's the good news. Someday it will get back to normal. Don't know exactly when, but I'm here to tell you someday it will. And as far as the Watchman's Report go, guys, I stopped doing those because there was just a big decrease in the viewership, and it took me hours to put together those reports. So they just weren't that well received. So, and that's okay. I mean, you can't have videos that are going to be well received every single time. I know that. I've done YouTube long enough to know that, everything that you create is not going to be, that well received. I get that. It's like TV shows. Not everything's going to be, a #1 hit. And I'm okay with that. My feelings aren't hurt. It's just something. Thank you, Nancy. That was very kind of you. My feelings aren't hurt. I get it, but I was getting less than 5% viewership on it, guys. So anytime you're producing any type of content that gets less than 5% viewership, it's time to change your content. So, I mean, even though it was the same content, but it went from 50% viewership almost, or 40, down to 5. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to spend 6 hours putting together all this material and nobody have any interest in it. And that's okay. We'll do other things, but that's why I'm not doing the Watchman's Report anymore. It's something that I still do every day. I'm just not going to put together a big video about all that stuff. We'll still do our regular videos, and that's good. It's all good. So I just want to let you guys know firsthand that's the only reason why. It's something I love to do, but and I still do. But on the East Coast, if you guys aren't prepared, I would highly suggest do so, because it does look like, according to all the models that I have access to, this thing is going to come towards the East Coast, more than likely make a landfall somewhere in the Carolinas. There isn't anything above it as far as the steering currents go with regard to the high pressure systems up there. It looks like, and those are the influencers. Those are what influence these storms. These storms don't have GPS, and they don't decide where they're going to go. The upper weather patterns do that for them. So it does look like it's going to steer this thing into the East Coast, somewhere in the Carolina, possibly Georgia. We don't know. It's still a little far out. 5 days, a lot can happen in 5 days, especially when you're talking about the weather, and especially today's weather with regard to the planet that we live on today. The weather, honestly, you guys know, you're wide awake. All 1,300 of you, you're wide awake. You know the weather has been wonky lately. You know it, and I know it. So having a forecast 5 days out, it probably can and will change. But in the meantime, just be prepared. And the very worst, you won't need it at all. But if you do need it, you got it. All right, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate the audience attendance today. I think we set a record. And that's going to be it for today. If you're on the Eastern Seaboard, be ready. 120 hours, you should start to feel tropical storm force winds. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a super day, and be safe out there.